Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Hard Nine Pod. Today is Monday, February 9th. We are now past the Super Bowl, which means there's only one thing really left, right? And that is baseball season. 3 days, I believe, from the Cardinals pitchers and catchers, but I think tomorrow many teams start as well.
I think a lot of them are
Um,
already
but
there.
but that's sort of the just the basis of what's happening right here. Is you see this beautiful dome, the third person to join us tonight, Kyle Reis. We are glad to have you back, my man. It's been a while.
Gentlemen, it's a complete pleasure to be a part of the Noble family this evening. And just like I said before, I'm honored to be back on. I love talking it over with you guys. Our conversations tend to be a little more, not off the wall, but a little bit more organic in nature, a little less like, hey, let's nail things down. And I like that more than I like really nailing things down. So let's get weird, fellas.
Hey,
I
that's what we're here for.
We had Kareem on last week, and I was like, send him a rundown just so we had an idea of what we were doing. And then as we went on, I was like, oh, I just brought up seven things I did not have in our rundown.
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
was like, so
There's
what
nothing
about
I.
that Mason Win?
Yes. So baseball, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, it went off the rails.
Caleb actually called me like 20 minutes ago, and he goes, "So do you have anything written down for this?" And I was like, "I haven't written a thing down for a podcast in like 3 years. Like
Good man.
there is nothing written down. If I don't remember it, it wasn't that important. Or
To
we'll
be
catch
fair,
up
There's
next time."
to be fair, I was gonna try to prep a little bit, and then my tire popped on my way back from my job.
no.
It's all right. I
Oh,
got it fixed for only $90 and whatever, but it did throw my night off a tad.
did they just patch it?
No, that I had, so luckily I had one under there, under my
Good.
trunk, which I didn't know about, but it was completely flat, so I had to sit at Quick Trip looking like an idiot for 20 minutes trying to fill it up. But we made it back, and that's all that matters.
Good, man. Good. Yeah, your chat with Kareem was very good. I didn't listen to all of it. I listened to
Oh,
part of it on the
wow.
drive. So before I started watching the Super Bowl last night on television as I was driving, I was listening to the podcast, and then I was like, now I want to see what's going on in the football game. But yeah, Kareem's
Awesome.
the best, man.
So you're saying we're not more important than the Super Bowl. I get
You
it.
guys are more important than that Super Bowl, and I regret my
Oh,
decision.
yeah, that Super Bowl was pretty rough. Devon Witherspoon, though, shout out, you University of Illinois grad.
Yeah,
0-star recruit
So
out of high school. Stud.
since
awesome.
the last time we talked, there's been a lot that has happened in the Cardinals organization. I mean, quite a bit. Sonny Gray is no longer here. Like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
However, I would love to just start, and then I'll let Caleb take it from there. After you give me your perfect answer, I assume, and that is like, what are your thoughts right now? Here's what I'll say. I'm going to set this up a little bit, and sometimes I get long-winded, so feel free to cut me off if you'd like. But I, as a lifelong 40, I mean, I'm 52, so I've watched Cardinal baseball since I was four. I mean, that's what I remember. So like 48 years, I really remember 82, but either way, that's irrelevant. Um, it felt like the 2015 to 2025 era was sort of going to be it was like we never had a direction. Like we were just band-aid on top of band-aid on top of band-aid. It's what it felt like from the fans' perspective. Now it feels like all of those band-aids have been ripped off. And as a Cardinal fan and someone who hosts a Cardinal podcast, it feels like we actually are maybe on a path. We don't know where that path's going to take us, but there's actually a clear-cut path that it appears like we're on. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that that's the best way to put it, Mike. At least that's what the Cardinals believe. And I think sometimes the belief, as long as the organization itself, as long as the people involved in the organization are buying in, then they can relay that message to the fans. And I think that that is what we are seeing and what's going on. I don't necessarily know. Like I believe that what they're doing is going to work. I believe they have the they're putting the infrastructure in place and they have the people behind the scenes to make this all work. That being said, I don't know if it's going to work or not, but I know that they are united in their vision and in their message. And I think that that's important. I think they have everybody buying in. I don't think it's forced buy-in. And I think that some of the turnover we've seen since Rob Serfolio, Mr. Day, and Chaim Bloom as a consultant came into the organization prove that maybe some of the people that are finding their way out of the organization from a front office and an instructor standpoint aren't bad people, aren't bad at their jobs, but they aren't united in that unique vision. And I think that's what you're feeling. Or what I think is happening. What you said about ripping off the band-aid, like that's it is. I hadn't thought of it like that, but last year felt like a scabbing over process, right? Like by the end of the year, John Mozeliak's gone. There's a whole new process in place, and that scab is healing. And, maybe you start scratching the scab and it bleeds again, or maybe it heals fully. I don't know what's going to happen, but it does that's a really interesting and unique analogy or a visual representation to bring up that I think is fascinating and really dead on.
Yeah, so they traded obviously four massive pieces of this organization, in varying degrees, but Nolan Arenado represented the hope, and then that hope was taken from us after 2 years. Then you brought in Wilson and Sonny, who I think varying levels of degrees, but both of them were good free agent contracts, more than solid contracts, especially for their age and what you paid them. And then Brendan Donovan, my king, who's no longer with us. Were you at all surprised that they were able to move all four of those players, and or were you surprised at the returns they were able to get for them?
Before we get into that, let me tell you what my thought process has been lately with Sonny Gray and Wilson Contreras. If they would have been the guys that were signed instead of Mike Leake and Dexter Fowler,
Mhm.
can you imagine what that would have done for the Cardinals in those moments? Like they wanted Mike Leake to be what they got out of Sonny Gray. They wanted Wilson Contreras to be what they got out of Dexter Fowler. And it was just, again, timing, timing
Mhm.
and opportunity, potential and timing.
Just
Really,
imagine if those two were on the 2022 team.
that's what I'm getting. That's exactly what I'm saying. Even the 2019 team or the 2021 team, that changes the equation, right? So really, the Cardinals do deserve some credit. And granted, it did not work out with those guys, but they deserve credit for kind of adjusting their model and signing the right guys.
Mhm.
And then, granted, it didn't work out, but they instead of all of those years of just poor free agent signing after poor free agent signing, it actually worked. And sure, the team didn't have success. They didn't make haven't made the playoffs, any of that, but they were able to turn those guys into other assets, which they couldn't do with Mike Leake. They didn't really do with Dexter Fowler. I just think it's fascinating to think about the timing of it all. I've been so critical of some of the free agent signings of the Cardinals over the last couple of years, and really the last of the free agent signings aside from like the 45-year-old pitchers that they brought in 2024, Lynn Gibson, that whole thing, which didn't, I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't bad, but like, it's really fascinating that it kind of ends that period, that 2015 to 2025 period ends with what are actually some really good signings.
Yeah.
You know, to your question about like the return, I've been really fascinated by this too, right? This is something that I haven't really got into, and it's a whole different conversation. But I think what's really fascinating about what the new front office is doing about the returns for these players, and I do think they're all pretty good. I mean, I think they're all really good. I think you couldn't really ask for anything more, and a very painting with a very broad brush. But they're kind of doing the same thing that Mo and Co did in like 2023, 2024, 2025, where they kind of get one prospect who can contribute at the major league level, right? Now,
Mhm.
the Donovan trades aside, but Hunter Dobbins, Dick Fitz. I'm glad I can finally say Dick Fitz somewhere, fellas. Uh,
We love it. We
I,
love
We
him.
we can't get enough of Dick Fitz.
I know we need Dick Fitz in our lives, in every hole. We need Dick Fitz to fill all our holes. And but like they get one prospect who can contribute to the major leagues immediately. They have one kind of at the high minors, mid minors, who's a wild card, and then they have another guy who's lower in the mid as like a wild card. I think about the Jaime Garcia trade. John Gant, Chris Ellis, and the Dykstra boy. Like
Goodness. What a flashback.
yeah, but like that's kind of what the Cardinals would do, and it helps sustain their model for a while, even if they only got small little bits here and there. I just think that now the development system is in place to capitalize on some of the data-driven aspects of positivity in those pitchers' profiles to get the most out of them, whatever that most ends up being. So, in a very broad way, yes, I think that the Cardinals did very well with all of their returns, and I'm anxious to see how the new development group and team can maximize what those guys do well.
My
It.
follow-up. Oh,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead. Go ahead.
Okay,
No, go
sorry.
right ahead.
Yeah, we need like a pointing system here. My follow-up would be, is there any of those four players or multiple that you thought they should not have moved? Like, do you think they should have kept Donovan and made him a part of the future, or maybe keep Wilson around to be the fiery leader or whatever?
I've always said, and I don't mean this as disrespect to Nolan Arenado. Like he's a true professional.
Mhm.
I just really would have liked to have seen what the clubhouse looked like and how the clubhouse operated with Brendan Donovan in the clubhouse without Nolan Arenado.
Hmm.
A chance to be a real leader, to see how people would respond to him. You know, I think Arenado does things so differently. And as the veteran with cachet, I think that it never really allowed the clubhouse to grow. And I don't mean that in a negative way. That's not to like beat up, but I just think that when you're Nolan Arenado and you carry the cachet you have, even if you're a great teammate and even if you're great in public and even if you answer all the questions and you're good to journalists, it doesn't really open itself up to the next generation of leaders. It just doesn't, you know. And so I guess I would say that I'm most disappointed that we're not going to see a Brendan Donovan led clubhouse without a veteran in there. But I do think they did well in everything that they did, moving all four of those guys. That my initial want to see Sonny Gray stay and to see Brendan Donovan stay and to see Wilson Contreras stay is put on the back burner because I think they did well with what they got in return. So it is definitely a results driven, I guess, belief on my part, a results driven thought on mine. Because if they wouldn't have got the pieces that they've gotten, I would have been like, man, trading Sonny Gray was stupid. Trading Brendan Donovan was stupid. Trading Wilson Contreras was stupid. Um, God bless them for even having the opportunity to trade Nolan Arenado. I can tell you early on, the little bit of chatter I heard from people who would know is that there was no market for him. When it was rumored that the Angels were kind of hinting around. The Angels called and were like, "Hey, can we get Nolan Arenado for Dexter Fowler price? Like, you could if you pay $1 million, if you play, we will pay $1 million of his contract."
And
And
Nolan said, no, no, you can't.
yeah, yeah. Well, even the Cardinals at that point were like, "We're going to see what else is going on." I don't even think they brought that to Nolan, to be honest. But right around the winter meetings, things picked up a little bit, and there was enough interest that they finally found something that worked. So, but yeah, like definitely had to get rid of Nolan. I rest in peace, Nolan Arenado's career as a Cardinal, and the rest they turned out well enough that it. I'm not upset about it.
Yeah, I think thing I hate the most about all the trades. I I was one of the ones singing the praises to trade Brendan Donovan at the trade deadline last year, just simply because of the negative amount of bats that were out there. And I thought you could possibly get a big time return for Brendan Donovan. Now, either that never materialized or the Cardinals decided we want all 29 of the other teams to be able to bid on Brendan Donovan, which also makes sense. And I understand that. But then they end up going to the Mariners. That's another argument, right? We can talk about it later. But the thing that not bothers me, but upsets me as a lifelong Cardinal fan is that we're never going to get to see Willie in the playoffs at Busch Stadium as a St. Louis Cardinal. Like
Yeah.
playoff Wilson Contreras as a Cardinal would have been must watch TV for every Cardinal fan.
Yeah, God, that's such a great call. It's funny. I do think Wilson Contreras in a different era of Cardinal baseball would be an all-time great Cardinal. For that
Yeah.
personality of it all. Put him on that 2013 team, and there's a little extra oomph there from a roster standpoint that maybe gets them to another level. Yeah, maybe gets them to the World Series instead of stopping the NLCS. I know it's a whole different thing because of pitching and Matheny and
Gosh.
that whole deal. But
Travis Ishikawa,
yeah, Travis Ishikawa and poor Michael Waka, and rest in
Poor
peace, Oscar.
Michael Walker. That's what I always think of. Poor Michael
it's the
Walker.
Yeah,
worst coaching decision of all time, I think.
Randy Choate, that whole deal.
Oh God.
But
This is my 12-year-old PTSD you're bringing up.
you're welcome. It's my pleasure. But I think that I do think that yeah, you're really right. Sonny's kind of a weird guy. Nolan's kind of a weird guy, but he'll always be Nolan Arenado. It's just really a shame that we won't get to see playoff Donnie and we won't get to see playoff Wilson.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, it just felt like like you said earlier, the timing was just horrible. It was right after that amazing 2022 where Goldie and Arenado were. I mean, you could argue that Arenado should have won the MVP and Goldie should have finished third. Like they were that good, and you get the guy that's finally the third piece in that lineup. That's not Tyler O'Neill, who might be in the lineup, might not be, depending on the week, and it just didn't work out, which sucks. But let's get to some of the returns because I'm interested to hear what you have to say about Jurangelo Sanja. I hope I'm saying that right. I've practiced it in the mirror every day trying to get it right. I asked Kareem
Hold
this, and
on. He is JC.
okay. We're gonna move past that. There's too much going on right now to touch on that. Anyway, I asked Kareem about this, and he kind of said his answer was no, but The word gimmick's been thrown around Sanjo a lot simply because he's a switch pitcher, and he's so good right-handed. I asked him if he thinks Sanjo would be more highly regarded if he was only a right-handed starter.
I think for the people who matter, I think he would be more highly regarded. But I think that the gimmick of it all ends up both hurting and helping him. I think some people will say, "Oh, but he's a lefty who can throw left-handed and get lefties out in a pinch," and people like that adds to his profile. And I think that on the reverse of that, people see that he throws left-handed and right-handed, and those people just hate things to hate things, and they're like, it's just a gimmick. By the time he gets to the majors, Pet Vendetti will be his best, most likely outcome. At that. But I think for people, and again, not to say that I matter, but people like myself, people like Kareem, people who understand evaluating prospects, understand that he's always going to be a right-handed pitcher, and that's where his best opportunity to be a major league contributor is. That the gimmick of it all, the uniqueness of the switch pitcher is a great thing to fall back on. And it's exactly why the Mariners were going to continue to have him throw bullpens left-handed, and why the Cardinals will be smart to continue what the Mariners were going to do. But they would also be smart to continue on with as a right-handed only in-game pitcher, because he needs to get a feel for his changeup, which can be very good, but is incredibly inconsistent. Because he's going to need another pitch or two to get lefties out. But the thing is, he wasn't particularly good against lefties as a left-hander. So that's where the gimmick of it all kind of, gets thrown into the trash can of me to me. His command was down, his velocity was down, movement profile changes as a lefty. So he was always going to be best suited as a right-handed pitcher unless he took huge steps as a lefty, which could happen. But when you're asking a pitcher, when a pitcher is deciding to split his time half and half, can't really take those steps. There's just too much to focus on. So I would say that he's worth it. In a weird way, he's exactly the type of prospect that is getting valued properly. Because
Mhm.
there's still a lot of things about him that are up in the air. We don't know how he's going to adapt to that changeup. Really, is what it boils down to, honestly. Because his fastball's good, his slider's good, his little slurvy curve is fun. He can keep lefties off of the rest of his stuff a little bit there. He's still going to get popped around a little bit by lefties, but if he can develop that changeup and get a little bit more arm side fade to that thing and command it, then that's a real pitch. He doesn't really need to move, get movement, that much more movement on it. Sure, it needs a little bit more depth, although he flashes the depth um, here and there. It's just that he's really inconsistent commanding it and throwing it. So if you can get the consistency of it, that's a real pitch. And he is every bit the pitcher that is worth a mid first round draft pick and deserves to be a top 75 prospect, even though right now he's kind of in the 91 to 125 range. So he is, I would say that the righty of it all makes him properly valued, where maybe the switch hitter of it gives him helium, but also is a detractor in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and when I saw that he had struggled against lefties as a right-handed pitcher, it was the least surprising thing I've ever seen because obviously a guy that has thrown from both sides for I don't know about his whole life, but at least in his collegiate career and up until this point in the minors, it's not surprising that hasn't really found that pitch that can get lefties out when he hasn't had the opportunity to do so consistently.
Yeah, 131 at bats or whatever it was is a decent sample. It's not huge, it's not small. It's kind of a mid-range
Mhm.
sample in 2025, or I think that's how many it was, somewhere around there. Whatever it was, it's not a lot. And even then, I think that was probably high. It's probably not even close to that. But like, uh, there's, I guess I kind of wrote in the Cardinal Nation write up, the Cardinal Nation over with Brian Walton, and we do our whole thing. But like, no one knows. No one knows because he's never done it. So let's all of us, the smartest guy in the room, and the rest of us, the dumbest guy in the room, myself, like let's just take a step back and wait and see what happens. And also, let's not be reactionary. This is a learning process for him. He'll probably start back at Double A where he finished 2025. He's going to need time to harness his stuff to get that arm into a position where he's using it 100 times. Throwing 100 pitches in a game, 80 pitches in a game right-handed. He's got work to do. So, give him a little bit of time and let's see what happens.
Earlier you had mentioned the 44-year-old pitchers that we've been, on getting used to seeing over the last 6 or 7 years. And it's obvious to me, like just watching the Heim operate right now. And I've seen it, I've even seen fans complain, which why wouldn't they? But like, oh, when are they going to get a hitter? Like, okay, it's obvious that he's restocking and retooling this farm system at every single level he can, and probably even overstocking it. Like with arms, which we have been needed for years. But I almost feel like he went into that first meeting with all of the administration and his coaches and just put his feet up on the table and said, "Did you see what happened the last 5 years? We're never fucking doing that again." Like that's what it feels like, right? So our first, let's get as many pitchers into this as we can, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I hope that that's the case. I
Too,
don't know,
me too.
I don't know if you could ask for much more out of that 40-year-old pitchers and Eric Fetty that than the Cardinals got. But it's like,
You could ask more out of Eric Fetty.
yeah, I guess you can get the White
Back
Sox
with
have proven.
Chicago, by the way.
Yeah, how funny is that? And honestly, I wouldn't even have said his name if I didn't, if it wasn't for him re-signing today with the White
Yeah,
Sox. But
goodness.
yeah, I do hope that that's the case, Mike. I think that I think what I hope is that the Cardinals are willing to understand and remember that pitching is a currency of baseball. And I think that that's what they understand, at least that's what Mr. Bloom believes now more than anything. And I don't necessarily know if I believe that all these pitchers are going to be major leaguers, but I
Right.
do think that they have enough bullets in the tank now that if say in a year there's no work stoppage and the Cardinals won 75 games and some players took some steps forward that they couldn't all of a sudden package maybe a couple of the guys they got now, maybe a couple of guys they've already had in order to make the team better in the long run. While continuing to restock the farm after the 2026 draft, I think we're entering that age of Cardinal baseball where they have enough prospect capital that they can get creative, make the team better by using those prospects, even if they don't make a major league debut for the Cardinals, to get real talent for the major league club. We'll see how that goes.
It's also fascinating to me because the replica, I mean, the model you're talking about doing that is the model that they just got used against them with by Boston. Like Boston traded away countless pitchers this offseason. They just traded another one today for Caleb Durbin, and that Devers trade, by the way, sheesh. Anyway, um, and what they were able to do is they didn't touch Peyton Tolley or Connolly Early or anyone in their actual rotation, Brian Bayo. All those guys are still there, and they were able to get a first baseman, which they've needed for a decade, it seems like. And Sonny Gray, who number two, number three in that rotation, who cares? Still probably going to be a playoff pitcher for them. Like the model that you're talking about is the one that they just experienced firsthand, just on the other side of it.
Yeah, yeah, and they're also building a team in a really interesting way. Like you said, the Devers trade between. I feel for the Red Sox fans because between the Devers trade and between losing Bregman, they're hurt, they're in pain, but they deserve a little bit of credit for the way that they're building their roster. I always assume that whenever Milwaukee trades a player, they're going to end up dying in a fiery wreck or something. So like to see Caleb Durbin, like I think Caleb Durbin has a chance to be like a really fun prospect a really fun player for the Red Sox as a third baseman. A solid defense, and they've already made up some of that offense with Wilson. If Wilson can continue to be the Wilson that we know, so I it's a smart way to do it, right? If you have pitching capital, trade it. Continue to bring pitchers in and trade it to make your team better, to fill your needs. And hopefully that's what the Cardinals are a year away, 2 years away from doing as they continue to stockpile pitching in the draft and so on.
Yeah.
Can we stay on the Donovan trade just for a minute? Because I want to ask you about Tai Pete, and I just have this. This kills me, so I really want your take on this. But I do kind of just want to know his overview is the greatest overview I've ever read because it's literally it says Pete has a power projection bat and handles velocity well. He played baseball and basketball and led the student section during varsity football games. So I really want to. I'm really hopeful that it was the power projection that the Cardinals were interested in, and not just the fact that he was great at the varsity football games. But what are your thoughts? I this is a guy I don't know. I know nothing about. But when you see 20-year-old power projection who plays up the middle on the field, that kind of makes you perk up a little bit.
Absolutely. I in my write up over at the Cardinal Nation, what I put in for Tai Pete, like when you first start talking about this young man, everybody talks about his charisma and his charm. And it doesn't quite come across when you're watching an interview with him. He actually has a little bit more, and I again in the write up, he has a little bit of combo of like Mason Winn and Victor Scott. He's a little bit more like outwardly engaging like Victor Scott, but the confidence does come through of someone like Mason Winn. Even like in cadence, he's like got a cadence kind of between Victor Scott and Mason Winn. So he's that kind of personality. He's an easy kid to root for, an easy kid to like. He loves baseball, and everybody loves him that's around him. It's part of why, even with the swing questions dating back to his prep days and position questions dating back to his prep days, he was still drafted 30th because he has a ton of intangibles that people fall in love with. It's also a good time to remind people, or I guess to reinform people, that this Cardinals organization is still being run very similar to how it was under Mo, where players' character really does matter. It's where they came from is going to matter. What their drives are going to matter. And Tai Pete is another one of these guys who has the right drive and the right personality to make it work. Now, I have many questions and many interests in Tai Pete's profile. Not as a person, but as a baseball player. And for me, when I watch him, and I think maybe I'm seeing something different than a lot of people are seeing, and we'll see how it evolves. But like, he's all bat speed. That's all he is. He's pull power and bat speed. And 19 years old, playing at high A is a huge assignment. You can look at Baseball Ref, and they'll tell you he's 3.5 years younger than the level. That's fine and perfect, and it's important context to have. Two things about that. One is actually it's really only one thing. One thing is we are ever since COVID, since minor league contraction, we are overvaluing the age at level. It's super overvalued, especially at the lower levels, because the lower level talent is a joke right now. It's as bad as I've ever seen, even at high A. It's terrible. So let's not get excited about he's 3 years younger. He is on par talent wise with that level. That's because he's such a flawed prospect with so many holes in his game. But he's working through it, and he has the athleticisms to get there. So I think that's an important context. But like, he needs to engage his lower half more. He needs to learn how to use the outside of the plate. He needs to learn how to be to make contact with breaking pitches, because you can drop a breaking pitch right in the heart of the plate and he's not going to hit it. He's not going to do any damage with it. So there's still so many things about his profile that need a lot of work. And that's not to say that he can't run into 30 home runs when all of your offensive profile in game currently is pulling fastballs with your immense swing, your immensely quick swing. You're going to stack home runs, but that's all you're going to do. He needs to figure out the rest of it. And that includes like learning how to hit being pitched backwards, learning how to hit on the outside quarter of the plate, and being defensive without compromising his bat speed in the long run. So he's very raw in that regard. The second thing I'll say too, and again, this was the second thing, is I do think that having prospects up the middle really, really matter. We've seen it with the Padres. The more people that you have that have shown the ability in the past to play shortstop, the more athletic your whole team becomes, especially as you spray them on other positions. But I do think that maybe we overvalue that a little too much too. And that's only to say that I think a team is only as good as the sum of its parts. So can Tai Pete be a sum of the parts player is just as important as him being a center fielder or shortstop. But he's made such solid progress as a center fielder. So here's the hoping that he can keep making that progress.
I also think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this offseason, getting these guys in, like Brandon Clark and Tai Pete, the Cardinals in previous years haven't really traded for guys like that. They've kind of traded for Thomas Ajacci and Drew Rom and whoever else that got in those deals. Matt Swanson, who's turned out pretty well, but still, regardless. And I think for the first time, we're getting these guys in, but also I see a front office that I have some faith that whatever Tai Pete can be, they're at least going to find whatever the maximum of that ends up being. Maybe maximum, maybe never, but they're going to maximize whatever they can with him. And I wonder if you feel the same, that this is a chance now where we can maybe be the team that steals Randy Arozarena. It doesn't give him up for a guy that can't get righties out consistently. Like, I'm hoping that the Cardinals are crossing into that territory where we're going to see one of these guys, whoever it is, ends up popping. You're like, wow, they got him for that? They got him for 85-year-old Sonny Gray? Wow, that's crazy. Like, do you think they have a chance to finally be that organization?
I think that they believe they do, and I think that they've done a lot to put people in a position to give them the best opportunity to do that. I'll be honest with you. I think the first guy that we're going to find that out about is Brian Ramos. There's a lot about what Brian Ramos does in a weird way that reminds me of Randy Arozarena. Now, it hasn't manifested at the major league level.
Did he film his coach?
Yeah, he has not filmed his coach yet,
Okay,
or
we gotta get
maybe
that first. We gotta get that done first.
yeah, yeah. But like the whole swing apparatus, the way he goes about his business, he's kind of a fun guy. Like maybe I don't know. I just think that that's the first litmus test. I think that if they can turn Brian Ramos into a utility player at the major league level, get what we saw out of him as a prospect before he started fizzling out in 2024. Like I do think that like that'll be our first litmus test. Really, I don't think we've seen that yet. I know people always point to Josh Baez, like, oh, look at these strides that Josh Baez has taken. Well, if you'll remember, he started taking those strides under Russ Steinhorn in 2024. Sorry, who
Yep.
can in 2024, when they'd pull him off of Peoria's roster or Palm Beach's roster and send him to the development list and work on his mechanics and work like the changes with Josh Baez started before the 2024 or the 2025 success that he had. It started in 2024, and all of that came from and it started with some of the swing changes. But the change with Josh Baez was simple. It was him rededicating himself and understanding what he needed to do to be a professional, and from there, the coaching staff working with him. So uh, I do believe to your question that they are putting the right people in place, and I do think we might start seeing some of those. I don't necessarily know if any of the results that we've seen yet you can say are the like oh they're the minor league coaching staffs are doing minor league instructors. I think that we've seen other than pitching, which is the one thing I think that we've seen some of the pitching change and develop and get better. But I don't necessarily know if they're in a position just yet to see the returns on their current prospects. But I do think that we know that they're identifying something, whether it be change ups and pitchers from other organizations or unique traded sweepers that they're trying to find and identify and maximize and bring into the organization and get everything else around it to work.
Yeah, I was kicked off the Kareem and Caleb pod. They wouldn't let me participate in that one.
Not what
So,
happened.
um,
So not what happened.
just kidding. Wait, I was at Mardi Gras parades. We are knee deep in it right now, Kyle. So life is good down here in New Orleans. But no, I was listening. I watched it the next day, and one of the things that I think, and Caleb and I talked about it a little bit, but they got into the weeds a little bit more, was just the fact that offensively the organization is really lacking. Like, we can talk about the catchers later because I think there's a lot of hope there. We can talk about Baez. That's another one there. But one guy that I'd like just your input on because I feel like it's gone radio silent with is Chase Davis. Like what is happening? And also, I will be honest. I'm not on Twitter almost ever or X or whatever
Yeah.
I don't even get on there almost ever anymore. So I'm not reading a lot of the updated stuff. I try to rely on podcasts, but where do we stand on former number one draft pick Chase Davis?
Yeah, it's funny. He started to show some signs at the end of the last season that he was starting to put it together. The easiest way to explain Chase Davis to the novice, and I'm not saying that you're a novice, but to the listener
Go
who
right
might be,
ahead.
it is that like the if a prospect can feel, and if you're listening on the podcast, I'm sorry, I have my fingers like a quarter of an my pointer and my thumb a quarter of an inch apart, but like if a prospect can feel this close to figuring it all out, and at the same time miles away from figuring it all out, it's Chase Davis. Part of that is because he can be way too passive in the box, and part of it is because he doesn't know what to do on the low inside part as a left-handed swinger. It's frustrating.
That's
You
very
know,
odd.
it's the weirdest thing, and this has kind of changed over the years. When I was a kid, I'm 40 years old. When I was a kid, it was, oh, if you're lefty, you hit that, you've got that natural uppercut and you're going to hit the pitch low and inside. Well, that's changed. Baseball's changed. Baseball's evolved. But for him, it definitely has evolved away from that. So the other tough thing about Chase Davis that is frustrating is that he's so good at using the opposite field. His swing is so designed for just opposite field gap, opposite field gap, opposite field gap. But because that's not in vogue, and because when you're a first round draft pick who's a corner outfielder, although he's turned himself into more than a sustainable center fielder, he can play center. He's going to play center. He's kind of an amazing center fielder. Um, he he needs to hit for power. And the problem is if he's just line driving balls to left field, left and left center field all the time, it's not going to do him any good. It's probably not going to do the Cardinals any good. So he's so caught in between this passive and this aggressive approach that it almost seems like he's caught in himself in every at bat, unless he's just like so zoned in on taking the ball to the opposite field, and then that's when he's always been at his best. So that's the deal with Chase Davis. And I haven't heard any updates this spring. I haven't heard anything about him. I know he's going to be a non-roster invitee to spring training. That has me excited. Candidly, I'm still not high on Victor Scott. I'm still not high on Nathan Church. The Cardinals keep plugging Victor Scott and keep plugging Victor Scott, who just had a complete swing rebuild, which I don't like at all.
Just bring the leg kick back.
All you had to do is bring the leg kick back. Now it is
Why?
important.
Why'd they take it away? I don't understand.
It's him. It's him and them, and trying to find something that's comfortable and trying to decide what kind of approach he wants to have. And he's working on bunting more, which is awesome with the speed. I get all that. That's all just a fancy way of me saying that, like, I would like to see Chase Davis seize what I think should be an opportunity to be the Cardinals starting center fielder on opening day, even though he's probably not ready for it. Not even remotely. He hasn't even patted on the bat at AAA. But you know what? I think to me, what I'm saying is I think it has more to do with my belief in what Victor Scott can be, even with that defense, and also what Nathan Church is. So that's all to say that, like, he has an opportunity here. This is probably his last chance to seize that opportunity, and I hope he does, because he has the offensive that potential that would be really, really fun to watch.
We
And
do know that in the history of the last, at least frequent history of the Cardinals, whether they're ready or not to make the team after spring training is irrelevant. Like, we know that for a fact. So now that could all change under Heim, but recent history tells us that's a chance.
all we need is for Jordan Walker to run Victor Scott over.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely.
the thing that's exciting to me.
We're never getting players on this podcast. Caleb is making sure of it that we are never.
Did he or
ever
did
gonna
he
get
not
them
run
on here.
Dylan Carlson over?
I'm just letting you know that you are just making sure that that's never going to happen.
I didn't make him do it. Um, and anyway, the thing that excites me about what you're saying about Chase Davis is when, like, players are in their heads and they're in between, which is very common in baseball because baseball is so hard. It feels like can be guys where an off season can do them so much good. Because then you're not worried about your results anymore in the off season because you're not striking out 3 times in the game. So hopefully that he has a productive off season because he's so talented. Like, you saw his swing, the Carlos Gonzalez stuff when he was coming out of college, but he's so talented. And one off season could click for him, and I really hope it does.
Yeah, me too. And we'll see him at AAA. He still has some work to do against lefties in general too. Like, that's another kind of a hole in his profile for Dick Fitz to fill. And I think that I think that he's the kind of guy who, I mean, everybody talks about Josh Baez, and I get it because he's but, like, you talk about a guy who can make a step and then really make an impact at the major league level. It's probably Chase Davis really still here. And I'm not even like, I'm so tired of Chase Davis at this point that I don't even really know what else to say.
I
Okay,
love
so
to
let's
hear that though, because it does feel like sometimes, we're so high on guys, and then if they don't just rocket out of immediately from day one, we just sort of either cast them aside or forget about them. And I'm just as guilty as anyone of that. Don't get me wrong, but that feels like that's a guy that coming out of college just seemed like, okay, hey, maybe we got a dude here. Like, maybe we got a dude or a future dude. And now, hopefully, like, you would think if he was a high school kid, you were talking about his opposite his hitting the opposite way. You think maybe he would grow into that power, but this is a guy who played 3 years at Arizona and has been in the minors for 3 years. That body's probably fairly well filled out at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, he is the man that he's going to be.
Right. Yes.
It's like Caleb said, it's just if he can work through the mental hurdles that are the high minors and Major League Baseball to get him to an approach where he's aggressive a little bit more frequently as opposed to passive and hunting his pitch to do damage with, because sometimes he's just too passive and he doesn't know where to go from there.
We can't talk about Cardinals prospects without bringing up JJ Weatherholt. It's just impossible. So I got to ask. I don't have anything specifically to ask. I just want to talk about him for a second. I'm super excited about JJ Weatherholt, not because I think he's going to come up and be Ronald Acuna Jr., but because I think he's the and I'm trying to word this. I can't remember a Cardinals prospect in recent history that I was so confident was going to at least be a solid major league player. Like, to some level. I don't know what that's going to be. I was talking to Kareem the other day, and this is going to make some people angry, but I was like, if he just repeats Dylan Carlson's rookie season, I'll be thrilled. And I don't think that's that far off for what I might be expecting from him. Is that wrong?
No, man. Like, that's been my whole thing all along with JJ Weatherholt. In the write up over at the Cardinal Nation, I kept saying it over and over again. Like, if you can be both incredibly exciting and in some ways incredibly boring, that's what you have with JJ Weatherholt. The thing that I love about JJ and again, I don't mean to uh, drag down smarter analysts than me who have the data and who preach the data. JJ, at least if he's sticking to what he's talking about in winter warmup, does not care about pull power. He doesn't care. He does not care. You want to know why? Because that's not his game. He's never going to be as good of a player as he can be if he's trying to pull the ball for power. That's not him. But what makes him exciting and also kind of boring is that he knows that. He knows who he is. And it's rare that you have a kid who knows who he is. And this young man does. So that's step one. When you have a player who knows who they are and who has a lot of advanced qualities about their approach, that gives you a baseline of it's just so easy to say, but like Brendan Donovan, it really is. It gives you a potential baseline of something like Brendan Donovan. Again, it's more complex than that. I don't want it to sit there. There's more to it. But like, yeah, in the write up, I brought up Dylan Carlson, yeah, his rookie year. The second half of Jordan Walker's rookie year. If you want to go a little further back, Stephen Piscotty, his rookie year, which is off the charts as compared to both Dylan Carlson in the second half of Jordan Walker.
Mhm.
Those opportunities are there. I think what happens with JJ Weatherholt is not his rookie year. He's going to come out. He's going to be an impressive rookie. He's going to hit 10 home runs. In all, I saw somebody tweet about it. I don't remember who it was, but like in every fantasy category, he's going to be a fantasy baseball category. He's going to be a contributor. Doesn't mean he's going to be a top of the line contributor or top 25 in home runs or top 25 in doubles or top 25 in RBIs or, top 50 and he's going to contribute in every area where you need a player to contribute. The question with him and with all of these guys is what happens after they get past 600 plate appearances at the major league level. How will he adapt to that? And I think what he does that so few other people, other prospects that I've seen do is, again, they know themselves, they're mature. He knows himself, he's mature, and I don't think he's going to let the game get in over his head. I think he's going to be slappy when it's time to be slappy. And I don't think a lot of guys have that quality in them as a 22, 23-year-old prospect. And, that's why it's so easy to default to him and Brendan Donovan. They're both hard workers. They're both dedicated. They're both willing to put in the extra work. And they're both willing to compromise some of the flashy parts of modern baseball in order to be scrappy, for lack of a better term.
So what you're saying is he's going to be Ichiro Suzuki.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. He's going to come close to hitting 400 a couple different times. And
Yeah. Caleb buried Ichiro just a week ago.
No.
I don't
no,
want to
no.
hear this either.
No.
Like I don't want to. I don't
Hold
want
on.
to.
Let me explain.
I don't love who you are tonight.
No, this is
to
a
be
fun
honest.
fact. I'm not burying Ichiro. He's obviously a Hall of Famer. Okay, stop. But did you know Lars Nootbaar is 2% better in his career than Ichiro as a hitter?
it makes you question WRC plus.
OPS plus is what I use because I want to do
Ah,
it quickly.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
I mean obviously we didn't get a lot of Ichiro's prime years because he was in Japan. But I was also another fun fact. I love Ichiro, so this really isn't against him, but it is fun. Eugenio Suarez had the same OPS plus last year as Ichiro did in his rookie/MVP season.
That is crazy. That is crazy. I think that tells you a lot about how baseball's changed more than anything.
It tells you
Yeah.
that Ichiro would not have won that MVP if he was playing and did that today. Not that
No.
he shouldn't have won it. He got like 350, but he wouldn't have. He wasn't even 30% above league average. When was the last time an MVP did that? I don't know.
It's also funny because can you imagine how fun Twitter would be if how half of the crowd would lose their minds about his WRC plus and the other half would be like, but he's hitting 350.
Yeah,
As
which
far as
is
like,
crazy, by the way. To be fair, 350 is incredible.
yeah, yeah, and we'll never value it again the same way that we used to, which is also crazy. Uh,
He also played defense, unlike Luis Ariz.
or Eugenio Suarez.
Hey, he tries sometimes.
He's trying his hardest out there, bless his heart.
I can't believe that poor
Oh,
guy hit 49 bombs and only got $15 million. I know only
that's
$15 million. I know it's a ton of money, but 49 homers. One more homer would have gotten to 50. Maybe he would have added another five onto that thing. Who knows?
Yeah. Doesn't it also make you happy that the Cardinals are in the state that they're in? Because can you imagine if, like, we were 2 years ago or even a year ago, and somebody else signed a Eugenio Suarez for one year at 16 or $15 million?
Hmm.
This fan base would lose its mind. It'd be like, "What are we doing here? What are we doing here?" And
I
now,
will
because
say those fans were spot on about Kyle Schwarber.
yeah, yeah,
They were spot on about Kyle Schwarber. So was Adam Wainwright, who was trying to get him to come. And the Cardinals were like, "Who needs 50 homers?"
uh,
Honestly, if you think about it, who really needs it? Because we don't.
a couple guys that I'm intrigued for with the on the Cardinal roster, and we'll get you out of here soon, Kyle, because I know you probably
no,
have bigger and better things to do. But are obviously back up the middle, but Mason Winn and Herrera. Just because I'm intrigued to see, and Caleb and I've talked a lot as a Mason Winn fan, I'm really intrigued to see what the next level offensively is for Mason Winn. I think we all know about the defensive prowess, and we all know about like the speed and everything else. I'm intrigued by that. And then part B of the question is, where do you see Herrera? Like, do you think he catches? Do you think he's a DH? Where do you see him profiling, not just offensively but defensively?
I think that what we saw out of Mason in 2024, and I'm not trying to say that that's his ceiling, but I think that that's what we can kind of expect moving forward. I a couple years back, Benjamin Hockman wrote an article for the Post Dispatch where he talked about Jordan Walker could be the Cardinals' first 2020 guy, and forever, whoever it was before. I don't know. I don't really care, to be honest with you, but uh, I remember responding to that like, no, Mason Wynn has the best chance of being the Cardinals' next 2020 guy, and I do think that one time in the next 5 years, we will see Mason Wynn get close to 2020. 20 home runs, 20 stolen bases. I do think there will be a season like that. I don't think he'll repeat it. I don't think, I think more than likely have a couple 13 to 16 home run seasons here and there. But I really think the baseline, if his knee stays healthy and if he, you know, depending on the type of hitter he wants to be, I think that 106 to 116 WRC plus for, 9 of the 15 years he plays in the major leagues, or 10 of the 16 years that he plays in the major leagues, is definitely something that we will see out of him. He might have one year where he's a 129 WRC plus, where if he hits 20 home runs and 40 doubles and stays healthy, and then he's a 7 WAR player between defense and his hitting ability. Like I think he has a season like that in him. I don't know if he'll ever get there, but I think really we should all kind of put our minds in the place that the 2024 season is the hitter that he is and can continue to be and build on in various different ways.
He truly is Andrelton Simmons, isn't he?
That's really tough for me. I hated Andrew Alton Simmons because of how good he was,
He was
and
awesome defensively.
and
Yes.
I think that that's kind of skewed my perception of him. I think that from a very, I guess, macro level, that there are a lot of similarities to be viewed between the two based on perception within the industry, where they're defense first and also do just enough offensively to really help a team at either the top or the back of a lineup.
Not to keep comparing Mason Winn because he's his own player, and this is a fun thing. I'm not trying to hate on players, but I see fun things and I want to say it. RM Layton, who does a really good job with Just Baseball, he's over there, did a breakdown of Mason Wynn's defensive season. He had 3 errors last year. All three of them were Wilson Contreras' fault.
Ah,
He should have had a perfect season. Like all three of them were Wilson like kind of trying to figure out first base, which obviously not his actual fault, but regardless, he was like pulling his foot off when he shouldn't have, trying to scoop a ball and letting it get deep, and the guy would have been out if he would have stretched. Mason Wynn with one leg could have had a perfect season at shortstop.
yeah,
But my
he's amazing.
comparison was going to be he sounds a lot like Tommy Edman, but they're just playing shortstop instead of second base.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because he's the perfect kind of marriage defensively of all the old stats that people cared about and all the new stats that people care about. Although I guess some of the new stats still don't really buy into him defensively, but that's
Which
whatever.
is ridiculous. Just watch the guy play baseball.
Just watch the guy play baseball. I like where your head's at. So, that's my thought about Mason. I know that that's kind of a generic kind of weird thing. I just think a lot of times we're like, there needs to be more specification about a player's offensive output. Because I could, if I say, he could be a 280 hitter, I don't think he's going to be a 280 hitter. I think that there'll be a year or two where he hits 280, but he's mostly a 265 hitter that gets on base, a career year 35% of the time, but probably in the 32 to 33% of the time, most of the time. And, I know that he has emphasized maybe being a little less power driven this coming year, focusing more on contact,
Mhm.
driving the ball for doubles here and there. So I just think eventually he's going to have to just be the hitter that he was in 2024 to get the most out of him. And he's going to have to learn that on his own because there's no telling him that. Yeah.
I also love what you're talking about right now because I go through players' baseball references all the time just because I'm a nerd and I like looking at their stats for their career. And it is so much more common than you would think to watch some guy with a 10-year career and have 2 or 3 years they're just so much better than the other seven.
Mhm.
And they're scattered too. So we always see these guys that will have a 130 OPS plus this year. And so we assume and we put it in next year, well, if he does that again, And very rarely do they repeat it unless you're a superstar. So
That's
if
it.
Mason Winn goes out there and has, 3 years where he is 20% above league average, the other, 7 years sandwiched in between those, he might be 5% below league average one or 10% above. Or this year where he was, 15% below. And that could be injuries, or it could just be he had a 6 week long hot streak like Pedro Pajes that boosted his season up way better than it was. Like, it's so much more common than people think because we do these projections every year. And I remember after Tyler O'Neill's breakout season, I was like, well, man, if we get that again, could you imagine? And he's never come close to it again.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's it. Baseball's tough. And the worst thing about our sport, and I do consider baseball our sport. I don't consider like I've got this whole thing. I always call them the Cardinals. I always refer to them as them. I don't. I'm not the fan to call like us when I talk about the Cardinals, but I do talk about baseball as my sport. I have a certain ownership over baseball. But for people like us in our sport, it's just so important to understand that and know that because you know we get in trouble with our sport because it's 162 games and we'll look at the end of the year and just see the cumulative stats, the WRC plus, home runs, doubles, triples, OPS, all of it, and it does not tell a fraction of the story of the season. Even on that large sample. So I just think it's important to kind of view things in a breakdown. That's where people get in trouble with Nolan Gorman, right? They see the home run total and home run potential, and they just ignore the fact that 60% of the year he's completely worthless to the team, and not even like bad. He's just worthless to the team. And the other, 25 to 40% of the time, he's maybe the best hitter in baseball some for 10% of
Yeah,
the
for
time.
a couple weeks. Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's where I'm at, and I'm glad we got a second to kind of talk about that. To your other question, the other person, if the Cardinals don't give Ivon Herrera, if he's healthy, run at catcher, then I hate them. I hate everything they stand for. I don't care. I don't care if it's the new administration or the old administration. At this point, in this era of Cardinal baseball, this new beginning of Cardinal baseball, if you're not going to give Ivon Herrera the primary closer job or the primary catcher job, then
Closer job. He can't even
he
throw the
should
second,
close
Kyle.
too. His arm is so healthy now. He got those little things taken out. He can throw 300 miles an hour. He should be the closer and the catcher, and he should throw to himself. Quite honestly.
Yes.
You want him to be
Uh,
Jason Mott, is what I'm hearing.
but yes, he should be the primary catcher because, and I think that this is going to be the first real test with Ali Marmol throughout the year. Again, I'm not an Ali Marmol hater. I like him more than I hate him. But he wants Pedro. You could not. He could sit there and put him on a polygraph, and he could say everybody's going to get an opportunity. But that MFer wants Pedro Pajes as his everyday catcher. That you could not. He could give me $1 million and I'd call him a liar. So it'll be the first test of what's best for the organization, what the front office is dictating, and what Ali is actually controlling. Because Ivon's going to struggle. He's going to struggle at first. He is,
Yeah.
He had a procedure. It's taking him a while to get back. He's going to be at the World Baseball Classic. But he should be the primary catcher for the whole season, unless it's just so awful into August that you're like, all right, Jimmy, here you go. Because Pedro Paez should not be in the conversation at all. My own 2 cents. He's a perfect backup. You've got a perfect backup. Just let him be a perfect backup.
Yeah.
But so that's my thought. Yes, he should absolutely be the catcher, and maybe that does hurt his offensive production in 2026 a little bit. Maybe it doesn't. Who knows? I don't care. But I know that they need, for the long-term health of the organization, even the short-term health of the organization, they need to find out by August if he can be an everyday catcher. And they're not going to find it out in April. They're not going to find it out in May. It won't be until they get through June and July and into August, once he's actually got his legs underneath him and his shoulder and his arm and all that, where we'll actually know. So that's just my belief, And you got to find out. I've got this other thing that I go on a lot of times, and I'm sorry for keeping ranting, but like,
No, that's why we brought you on here. What are you talking
good, good. Yeah, joke's on you. I don't have anything to do, so I'm going to rant for longer than I normally do.
about?
But like, the Cardinals' catching depth has become such a point of conversation. And I know that a lot of people thought maybe they'd trade some of the catching depth. Now, I just bash Pedro Pajes, but Pedro Pajes is an incredibly valuable part of what the Cardinals do. And as a backup catcher, if he's given the opportunity. But that's just to say also that, like, you can never have enough catching depth. I cannot, every opportunity I get this year, and Brian Walton with Wednesdays and Walton and Reese is going to be so tired of me talking about this throughout the year. But there's no such thing as too much catching depth. All six, if you put Yohel Pozo and Jimmy Crooks and Pedro Pajes and Ivon Herrera and Leonardo Bernal and Raniel Rodriguez and Alec and Campos and all of the catchers in the organization into a bag, only one of them is going to come out. So you either if you're going to trade from that depth, you have to be 100% sure that you're keeping the one that's going to pan out, or else you're making a mistake because you need as many bullets at the catcher position for the major leagues as possible. So like, sure, next year AAA you'll probably have Yoel Pozo in some capacity, maybe a Jimmy Crooks in some capacity, maybe in Leonardo Bernal in some capacity at catcher. That's fine. That's not an issue. Use 2026 to figure out which one of your guys is the guy moving forward. Uh, and if it ends up being Pedro Paez, maybe it is. Maybe Pedro Paez ends up being the best of the group. I mean, there's a real chance, right? He's a top 15 defensive catcher. He's probably a top 20 offensive catcher.
He destroys sliders. You hand that man a
Yeah,
slider, he's going to hit it out. I don't know why
exactly.
people throw him sliders. I don't know why they do it.
Especially elevated sliders, which makes it even weirder.
I don't know if they
Uh,
do it on purpose sometimes, though.
yeah, maybe just to keep him in there. But like, to have honestly to have a top 15 defensive catcher and a top 20 offensive catcher, that might just be the best that you get for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And that's not really awful. But you need to know, what Pedro Paez is. You need to know what these other guys are before you make that decision about what depth to move. So I just want to say that.
Can I ask you I'm going to give you what I believe their reasoning for not playing Ivon Herrera is going to be, and I want you to, before it happens, refute it. They're going to say that they want their young pitchers not to have to deal with the base running mistakes that's going to be happening. If he's on, if Ivon Herrera is behind the plate, because if Herrera's as bad as he has been recently at throwing runners out, those guys are just gonna. A single's a double, a walk's a double might be a triple depending on who it was. So do you disagree with that logic? Because I guarantee that's going to be what the writers say about it.
You might be right. You could very well be right. I would understand that logic, even if I think it's complete and utter bullshit and it doesn't matter.
Mm,
When we're talking about what the Cardinals are going to be in 2026, I
yeah,
think if he becomes a liability in pitch calling and he's going against the grain with the one thing about the new organization, the new front office, the new think tank that is the Cardinals front office, is they're going to use what pitchers do best, and they're going to use
yeah,
that frequently. And if he's behind the plate, like, all right, Matthew Liberatore, your four seam is crap. Let's throw it 80% of the time. Then that's a criminal offense.
yeah.
Like we know that, right? So if he's doing stuff like that, that's a real reason, and they might end up using the reason that you mentioned. But if they do, they're full of shit, and it's stupid, and I hate it
Yeah.
because again, 2026 does not matter from a result standpoint. It just doesn't. It's you want to see
Hmm.
development throughout the year. It's just, and then when the results accumulate, then you can see. But you want to see growth from all of these guys. And the other thing is like none of these pitchers are strikeout pitchers. Dustin May might end up being. Who knows what Dustin May is going to be? I don't care about that at all. Like, but Hunter Dobbins, Richard Fitz, Kyle Leahy, uh, Michael McGreevy, they all work quick. Matthew Liberatore
Hmm.
doesn't, so it shouldn't really hurt them. But like they all work quick, so I don't care about any of that. Don't give me the excuse.
Yeah.
Just run them out.
It's also why you should give Ollie Marmol a contract extension, even if it doesn't matter.
Yeah, yeah.
'Cause then
Well,
he won't care about the results as much.
yeah. So I just want to say real quick, if you're willing to go into the 2026 season with Ali Marmol as your coach, and this is probably the most important season of all of the upcoming seasons, yeah, you just keep him around for 2027,
Right.
2028. Yeah, you can always pivot away. Like just give him another 3-year extension, and if it's shit, then you can just move on. If you feel comfortable with him in 2026, then there's nothing that's going to change and make you uncomfortable with him in 27 or 28 as you go through your build.
Yeah, if you don't believe in him enough to give him an extension now, then why is he still here?
Yeah, that's it. That's
That's
really
my
it.
take, at least.
Especially with the organization resetting.
Go ahead,
Okay, last thing I have.
Dad.
Sorry, there's a little awkward silence there. I thought Kale was gonna take it, and then he didn't, and
No,
then it left
I
an awkward.
realized you hadn't talked for a while, so I
Yeah, it's
felt
all right.
bad.
It's all right. The last question I have, and I'm probably the guy that maybe everyone in your position is so tired of talking about, but it just feels like you have to. So, I mean, I don't even know if I need to say his name, but I assume he's going to play right field this year for the Cardinals, and I'm just
Nathan Church.
intrigued to see. Maybe, I mean, it could be
Pedro Paez.
it very well, or it might be
That,
Herrera. To be honest
that's
with
odd.
you,
That's more plausible,
like
actually.
who knows? But like. I mean, is this it? Is this the make or break it for Jordan Walker in a St. Louis Cardinals uniform?
I think barring unusual circumstance, more than likely, you know, but again, he's cheap after next year too. So,
Mhm.
maybe not make or break exactly, but make or break for him, because I really think that now we're not talking about Cardinals, we're not talking about Cardinal fans. We're talking about Jordan as a person, as an individual who plays baseball. And I think that's a little bit different than, you know, the baseball player Jordan Walker, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
So I do think
absolutely.
that in some ways that this is the make or break year, but I don't think it's for the Cardinals. I don't think it's for us. You know, his value's in a weird spot where they're not going to be able to just like unload him, and if they do, it'll be for a player to be named later. And I just don't see the purpose for doing that unless he's absolutely trash, unless he's somehow worse than he was last year. Um, but yeah, it's all about what Jordan wants to make out of himself. And I think that they have him in a really good position. I think he has himself in a pretty decent position. I still think, I guess taking a couple steps back, I've been one of these guys who thinks that he's bulked up too much. I don't think he's doing himself any favors. I think it's actually limited his athleticism. Not to say at some point he couldn't go back up to being 260, but like he's going to enter the year more svelte than he's been since 2023, and he's still 255, 250. And that's too much weight for him. It limits his ability to get athletic. Now, the Cardinals have done a really good job and he's done a really good job this offseason of focusing on how the body moves as opposed to what his mechanics are. And that's important from a perspective and also a motion standpoint. So I think all of these are really positive things. I just think that until he can re-access some of the athleticism he displayed as a prospect, and until he learns, you know, how to spit on that outside breaking pitch, I don't know how he's going to end up being anything more than what he is. But another thing is he's a mile and a half off the plate. I'd like to see him get up on the plate a little bit more. But that's
Mhm.
just me. But yeah, look, I think Jordan's going to have an okay year. I don't think it's going to be great. It's not going to be piss poor like it was in 2025. And that lends itself to, will next year be the make or break season? I think about Nolan Gorman. We're still is 2026 the make or break year for Nolan Gorman. If
Yes.
2025 if 2025 wasn't, then why is 2026? Like, if that's just to say that, like, if Nolan Gorman gets 2026, then Jordan Walker can get 2027.
Okay,
Yeah, and it just feels
that
like
makes sense.
those guys are being kept around almost because the Cardinals haven't developed a star in forever, and those are the two guys that people talk themselves into because
Yeah.
they each have like at least one elite skill that we thought that they had. Like Gorman just hitting the ball a mile, and Jordan Walker hits the ball as hard as anyone in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked ourselves into, or at least some people did, them being the guys, and it just hasn't worked out. So it's like maybe this year it'll work out.
Yeah.
And for Jordan, the last thing I want to say is I know you probably saw Brant Brown's comments earlier in the late in the season about his work ethic and things of that nature. I just wouldn't because I know you know him far better than I do and know how he goes about his business. What did you think of that?
I think all these guys work really hard.
Yeah.
I don't think he's out there playing video games. I don't think he's staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning playing video games and then shows up at 1 and just hangs out at the locker. Right? Like, he's working really hard. I just think that everybody learns a different way. Everybody handles struggle a different way, and he didn't struggle until he made it to the major leagues. So it's a
Mm.
whole different battle for him. Uh, I think that when you're an organization and you want a player to do a certain thing a certain way or certain things certain ways, I think it's hard to get any player out of their old tendencies. And I think that that can be construed as butting heads or not working as hard, when really what's happening is the message isn't being conveyed to a way where the player understands it or is willing to accept it. And that might not be because of the organization, it might just be because of the player. And what we often know about disagreements is that you're talking about two people coming from two groups, coming from different perspectives, who think that they're communicating properly, who think that they're in the right and might not be understanding each other's message properly. So, that's again just a little bit of cryptic background to say that, like, Jordan's in the cage every day. He's in the cage every day. He's working on a swing every day. He's trying to get bigger and stronger and better every day. And it might not necessarily have been what the Cardinals wanted him to do. It might not necessarily have been the roadmap to success for them. And it might not have looked necessarily like he was working hard every day. He was just doing it his own way. And it might have conflicted with what the Cardinals were trying to get him to do. When really what they just needed to get him to do was get him down with, somebody who spoke a language that he understood, with a passion that he understands, like Casey Chenoweth, to try to get the most out of him in a responsive manner. Because that's all that is. That's all teaching is. That's all coaching is.
Yeah, it felt to me the whole time like it wasn't a situation of he's not working. It was a situation of sometimes you can work and you're not working in a way that's not necessarily helping you. But you're
Yeah,
still working as hard. It's just not producing you any results. Which is like when Nolan Gorman changes his batting stance 8 times a week.
yeah, yeah. And like it's one thing to be like hey, and this isn't just about no, this isn't just about Jordan Walker. This is about all the players. They have all this data, they have all this information, and they could say, all right, little by little, we're not going to like inundate you. We're not going to overexpose you to data. We're not going to overexpose you to all this information, but these are the changes we want to make. This is what you need to do differently. And when you're a competitor and you're trying to get there quicker, you might take what might be perceived as shortcuts, as I make air quotes, when really you're just trying to get there quicker. It's not about getting shortcuts. It's not about cheating. You're just trying to get there quicker. And you think that what you're doing is working, and it's not. So it's just like it's getting on the same page. Something I think about a lot. Chaim Bloom has said this. Rob Serfolio has said this. They've said it a lot since winter warmup. They have to slow down sometimes. They're trying to move so quick that they have to slow down sometimes as an organization to make sure that everybody is coming along with them at the same pace. And that's how it is with hitting, and it's instructing and trying to get everybody on the same page. Like, you're working so quick and you're moving so fast that sometimes not everybody's on the same page because they're not operating at the same speed. And I think that that's what was happening more with Jordan than anything.
One of the things I've always heard from like I guess coaches and execs in the NFL is that for an organization to run well, and I'm just singling out the NFL because I think all sports are this way, but you have to have your owner in line with your GM, in line with your head coach slash manager, right? That those three have to be like in line. And it sure feels like that maybe the last 10 years that we talked about and kicked off the show with was not only were they not on the same page, it felt like maybe they were all reading different books. And I think maybe now that's got to be the hope as a Cardinal fan, like we kicked the show or the pod off with, is they are all three of those structures potentially and hopefully are all aligned, and it goes all the way down to single A and down to the developmental league.
Yeah, that very well said. Yeah, I think that's important, especially when you're talking about a build or a rebuild or whatever you want to classify the Cardinals as. If you're starting from the ground up, that's more important than anything. Absolutely, Mike.
Yeah. Kyle, thank you so much. Listen, I'd like to extend. I don't know if you're going to get out to see a lot of prospects live this year. I know you're a busy man, but if you need to see some of the guys who played LSU, come on down and maybe we can do like a live pod from one of the drinking establishments next to Tiger Stadium.
That'd be awesome, man. I'd love that. Yeah, honestly, I'll keep you updated. My girlfriend Ashley, she's always like we've been talking about vacations a lot, trying to figure out what our next vacation is going to be. And her cousin's a big fan of New Orleans, and they've been down to New Orleans a couple times, and we've talked about it. So it just might be. There's no telling what's in store, but if we do, absolutely, I wouldn't
Yeah,
even think twice about it.
if you come down, please seriously hit me up. We'll take you out. We'll have a good time.
I can't do
Awesome.
a podcast while drinking. My Ichiro takes will get way wilder.
I can't wait. We got to look. Hey, you stopped at McDonald's. You got your McDonald's drink today?
No, no, this was from where I filled my tire up with gas. I need to pick
Oh,
me up.
way to
Gas, not
go.
gas,
You
air.
filled up your
Filled up
tire
with
with
air.
gas. You're gonna
That
have
might
to,
be
you're
the
gonna have a
problem. That
problem with
might have
that.
been why it popped on the road. That might have been why.
Kyle, before we get out of here, do us a favor, please.
Yeah.
Let our listeners know where they can find you and the new podcast.
Oh, you'll find me behind probably a gas station somewhere trying to siphon out the diesel fluid out of Caleb's
Out
tire.
of, out of my truck tires.
Yeah. No, so you can find me. I guess now I am a member of the Cardinal Nation. Brian Walton's the Cardinal Nation. I write over at the Cardinal Nation, and I do a podcast called Wednesdays with Walton and Reese.
Which is
Uh,
great, by the way.
Thank you very much. It's been enjoyable to do. Not as much bourbon drinking, but who beggars can't be choosers. But yeah, you can find us. We have our own podcast. We were part of the Scoops Network. We had some issues with them not posting the podcast in ample time. So Brian was like, "Hey, let's just go do our own thing." So we've been doing Wednesdays with Walton and Reese, where we talk about prospects mostly, and then some of the baseball stuff. And again, go over to the Cardinal Nation. I do want to say at the Cardinal Nation, subscribe to that because it's $79 a month, and you can pay a year, $79 a year. You can pay monthly. I don't even know what I'm saying. but like you can pay monthly, but it's worth it. Brian is going to be down at spring training, on the backfields, posting video, giving updates on the prospects and everything. No one else does that. Sure, Daniel Guerrero will do it a little bit for the Post. Derek Gould will write some great prospect pieces for the Post Dispatch, but no one will do it the way that Brian does. That'll be his primary focus. And then if you're so inclined, we did a prospect handbook where we wrote about the top 52 prospects in the Cardinals organization. You can get a PDF of that, or you can get the hardbound. Get one of those things because there's nothing like it. I can't even explain what it's like. It's not just about prospects. It gives a picture of what's going on in the Cardinals organization, what's been going on in the Cardinals organization from a prospect standpoint for years now. So it's really cool. It's really fun. If you feel so inclined, you got a little extra cash to spend, go get
We
it.
we will be getting a Hard Nine podcast subscription tomorrow. Dead serious. So we will
Awesome.
have that because that will help me out a lot. I mean, I hope there's an audio version because I'm not much of a reader. So I do hope that there. No, I'm just I'm
Kyle's
kidding.
Kyle's voicing it.
Yeah, as long as, yeah, fine. That'd be awesome. But we will be. So
I
for the
also
rest of our
I
viewers and our listeners, please check that out. You will not regret it. There's a reason we have him on.
I also think now is the best time to go do it because the St. Louis is losing a lot of really talented beat writers, and yeah, they're losing a lot of beat writers that because journalism's going in the tank, unfortunately. So that all that those videos of John Denton, whispering 3-1 to Josh Baez, you won't get those anymore. So you've got to go subscribe to Brian Walton and Kyle.
Love
Yep.
it. Well, thank you guys.
Dude,
And again, thanks for having me. I love you guys, and it's always a pleasure to be on.
absolutely, man. Thank you so much. Maybe one night we can get you and Brian both on later down
Yeah,
the
let's
road.
do it.
That'd be awesome.
You got to
Yeah,
be
we
on your
would
best
appreciate
behavior,
that.
Dad. Brian's a
I
professional.
I I don't love that ricochet shot. That was direct actually. That
You
wasn't
would
even
have hated my
ricochet.
Ichiro take,
Yeah,
probably.
right.
Which, by the way, was
Right.
a joke. I'm reiterating, it was a joke. Ichiro was great.
All right. Thanks, dude. We greatly appreciate you. We will talk to you soon. Go check everything that Kyle does out. It is worth it, especially as Cardinal fans. We appreciate you all. Have an amazing week. Go Cards.